I've hit a wall and I've got to get this off my chest or else I'm going to explode. My name is Kristin, this is STALK, and today I'm going a bit more into detail as to why I can't get to terms with review scores. Two weeks ago I finished Gundam Build Fighters and Steins Gate, and also finally came around to watching The Garden of Words. While those three animes seemed very different, they all had one thing in common. When I headed over to my anime list to change my status, they gave me a really hard time deciding on a befitting review score. I got out of the Build Fighters plight quite easily. It is hands down one of the best shows I've seen in a while, so I only had to figure out whether it's a 9 or a 10. What if Build Fighters Try is even better? Then again, giving it a 10 would also mean that it's on one level with so-called timeless classics like Bebop and Fullmetal Alchemist, for example. Can I really do that? I shoved that thought aside. Everything it does is executed perfectly. I'm in complete awe as to how much I enjoyed kids playing with plastic robots, and why shouldn't I celebrate that? Next up was The Garden of Words. I have had problems rating Makoto Shinkai's movies before. They look undoubtedly beautiful and stunning. The stories Shinkai tells are just so trivial that I usually need some time to figure out whether I even like them. They keep my thoughts occupied for a while, but having a number reflect my thoughts is difficult. My brain completely broke on Sunday after the last episode of Steins Gate. My only reaction was, I have to watch this at least 2 more times to get every last bit out of the series. I kept thinking about the things I liked, the things I have to see again to figure out how I feel about them, and the things I didn't exactly understand. With that in mind, I headed over to my anime list, removed all of my scores, and wrote a script explaining my issues. Don't get me wrong, there were shows I had no problems at all finding a fitting number for. When I scaled from 1 to 10, they ended up with a 5, meaning I didn't even care enough about them to figure out how I felt about them. They were so mediocre that by the time the credits rolled for the last time, I'd already forgotten I've seen them. Funny enough, I got a lot more careful when I enjoyed something. Can it really be called a masterpiece? Was it great or just very good? Why do I depreciate this by adding just? What does that even mean, a masterpiece? When we consider Monet's paintings masterpieces, how did Picasso end up next to them? Review scores make things comparable that shouldn't be compared. Does Build Fighters only exist to sell more toys? Maybe. But then it totally can't stand up to any of those really good shows, because those shows conveyed a really significant message, were visually intriguing, and the characters and the story were so unique and memorable. At least, that is what the little snarky voice in my head says. I have to shake my head a few times to silence it and remind myself why those arguments are a whole load of crap. Build Fighters handled what could have been an easy money grab with grace, and created a world in which kids fight with plastic robot models that come to life, while still managing to convey classic values like friendship, believing in yourself, fostering creativity, dreams can come true, all the good stuff. Next to that, the fighting scenes are fully drawn instead of using a CG shortcut. Do you have any idea how rare this is? The characters and story might seem to you like something that has been done before. The trick is to understand archetypes to make them come to life. But not only is it a charming story I would show my kids one day without thinking about it twice, it is also a perfect introduction into this huge Gundam franchise. It's the simplicity that makes it brilliant. Take Fullmetal Alchemist for example. It is so popular because it combines various genres and themes so perfectly. It has a lovable set of characters, each one with his or her own little quirks and backstory, no matter if they are our heroes or villains. It switches so perfectly between heartwarming moments, action scenes, comedic interactions, and still manages to emerge into more philosophical and darker topics. Between all of this, the questions Fullmetal Alchemist raises aren't something earth-shatteringly innovative. However, it's not only the media we consume that has individual features. Individuality applies to us as well, depending on our own values, background, and how experienced we are with any type of media. We consume it differently. If someone got into anime because of Sword Art Online and considers it the best thing in the world, who am I to lecture him? Elfenlied was the first mature anime I've seen, and at the wise age of 16 it blew my mind. I refuse to watch it again because I will most likely find out that what I considered deep and thought-provoking at the time might turn into some half-baked garbage. In the same fashion, there are movies and books I wasn't ready for when I saw them the first time. I came back to them later and wondered why exactly I couldn't get into them. That is only natural. Based on what I just stated, each review score means something completely different, both when awarding them and interpreting each other's. I, for example, had one major problem with Trigun. Just looking at nothing but the digits, somebody might assume that I have no idea what I'm doing. Rating The Mare 3 Eternal Summer with a 10 out of 10, but a masterpiece like Trigun with a meager 7 out of 10. This might make feel you better about yourself because muhahaha, you've once again uncovered a so-called reviewer on the internet who has no idea what he's doing. Hell, she's a girl, so we better burn her at the stake anyway before she ruins the internet. You still would have no idea about that issue. Trigun left me hanging for 17 episodes. They weren't useless, and I'm aware that they were there to illustrate Vash's various character traits, and that's exactly how you characterize. I would have felt completely different had all the background information that is revealed in the last couple of episodes been scattered throughout the 26 episode long run. I understand why so many people like it and how vastly Trigun and Vash have influenced other series and other characters. Knowing all of this, we can finally have a productive conversation about my opinion. Isn't that great? Furthermore, the moment we start to argue that something isn't worth spending your time on because it has been done in a similar way before, is the moment we can shut down the internet. Once you've read the Odyssey, you know every story ever. Congratulations! I'm a bit astonished every time something gets flagged for being a so-called genre story. I've read reviews in which Shinsekai Yori, for example, is criticized for being set in a world that has all the features we expect from a dystopian society. Despite the fact that there is a lot more to it than that, I especially love the features that made it unique. We shouldn't forget why we have genres in the first place. Many years ago, a literature scholar sat down and decided that if a novel does particular things, we should call it a dystopia instead of science fiction, adventure or fantasy. He did that because we humans like to think in boxes, as everything else would mean chaos. Stating the obvious, however, doesn't feel like a valuable point of criticism to me.
Maybe you should walk me through what you're alleging here.
I believe it's all in the letter.
I'm not saying it's not, but it's a bit hard to read.
Next time I'd use double ply.
Let's not fixate on the medium, okay? Let's look at the message.
It's not about knowing that various turns of events in Shinsekai Yori will happen, because they are nothing but crafting tools to bring across its message. It's about understanding what it might have been a metaphor for in the time it was written in, what people back then took away from it, and whether it can apply to us. Are we in any way close to the type of society described? What influenced the author? Maybe we have already overcome the described problems, but created new ones even the most creative author couldn't have come up with. There simply are questions every generation since the dawn of time is asked, and depending on the time period, socioeconomic factors, or scientific progress, each generation has found a different answer for it, although they were crafted with the exact same tools. Animation itself, by the way, is one of those crafting tools as well, which is why I go full panda every time I read. It's quite decent for an anime. Boiled down to the core, that statement is as valuable as my mom wondering why I'm still watching shows that look like the stuff that was on TV when I was a child. That doesn't mean I'm against criticizing something that deserves critique. It's the way some reviews approach critique that confuses me. Not in a haha funny way, in a scary way. Applying the same stencil over and over again and basing a judgment on checking how well a show fits into it is useless. A review should be an approach to underline the individual strength and figure out the individual flaws. Take Parasite here. About halfway through it lost sight of the Homo homini lupus-esque message and got lost between teenage romance and its bloody stupid characters. Pointing out flaws has a very good reason. It helps us to create better stuff in the future. Without critique, we would wear shoes on our head. However, if you like a particular shoe on your head, don't mind my narrow-minded thinking. The worst thing a critic can publish is joyless masturbation over how he is smarter than anyone else around him. Reading or watching witty and snarky reviews can be fun, unless it's only for the sake of being witty and snarky and not coming up with a better product next time. I'm surprised that a lot of people think a good critic has to sit on a high horse and be harsh. That must be such a sad and depressing life. I can hear you screaming. But if we don't use review scores, how should we separate the wheat from the chaff? How do we compare them? There is so much stuff coming out. How should I know what's worth spending my time and money on if you don't give me that score? Our favorite argument when we mess up in school or university is that grades can't measure our own individual abilities. We strongly emphasize that this rigid system is completely inept, as we ourselves like to be considered complex and unique. How is it that so many people insist on applying those small-minded rules to stories that are just as complex as we are? The best thing is that we have so many different ways to tell them nowadays. Of course there are books, but also movies and TV shows. In video games you can even be an active part of the story. They come in black and white or colors, computer animated or drawn. They are flamboyant, exciting or calming. The best of them have our eyes sparkle with amazement, clawing the edges of our seats, hoping that the good people will get away and the baddies get what they deserve. Sometimes they hold up a mirror or make us cry. Once they are over, they leave us with an empty feeling. We miss the really good ones, the ones whose characters almost feel like close friends to us, even before they are over, and we count the days until we see them again. Why would we dissect them, tear them apart into tiny bits and pieces, weigh and measure each one according to a boring set of rules only very few people really know how to handle? We can't compare them. Even if I would find a rating that doesn't mess up my already messed up brain, it can't tell you whether you will like it or not, because the story is so much bigger. There is still so much I have to learn about how to review. At the end of the day, I'm trying to break down my thoughts, expectations and wishes on a production into a 10-minute long video and go into detail as to why something works, why something else doesn't. After that, it's completely up to you whether you agree with me or not. I'm glad to know that a lot of reviewers sooner or later get to the point where they are wondering whether they really are one of the very last sane persons left on the planet. Of course, you end up realizing that this can't be the case and get to terms with the realization that you are the insane one. I'm surprised how relieved I feel not having to worry about the numbers anymore, and I hope that getting rid of scores becomes a thing. There are things I want to try in the future because Filmcritic Hulk and Ebbie, who's episode 25 on YouTube, got me thinking about a way review, and it made a lot of sense. So be excited for that with my upcoming winter reviews, and I'll see you next time.